Hey, everybody. Thanks, Shane. Appreciate that. Welcome. Glad you're here this morning. My name's Rick Murdoch. I have been doing these sessions for the last year or so, and I'm glad that you're here with us today. We're going to talk about, well, lots of things, but belonging is the main topic of focus today. And I think this is an interesting topic. It led me down some interesting rabbit holes that hopefully we can kind of explore together. But before we do that, I just wanted to make you aware of a couple of things. Just a couple of announcements. You may have noticed last week in your inbox, in your email, a statewide email talking about a new leadership training called the Supervisor Survival Guide. If you didn't notice it in your email, you could go back and find it. I think it went out statewide. It's a training that is meant to be kind of fundamental to leadership and management for the state of Utah. It's tailored specifically to the needs of managers that work for the state of Utah. You don't have to be a manager to take it. You're welcome to go check it out. You can find it. Actually, this link here on this slideshow is live, so you can find it through the slideshow. We'll send this slideshow out to everybody when we're done today, so you'll get it in your inbox. But you can also find it in the employee gateway. If you just go to the training drop-down menu, the training tab, go to the drop-down menu. It's at the bottom there, Supervisor Survival Guide. You can go check that out. It covers things like leadership. It covers hiring practices. It covers onboarding. Also talks a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and some other important topics for supervisors to know about. I just realized that I have not turned on my camera. And how are you going to be able to see that I put on a tie this morning if I don't have my camera on? So let me turn that on. Okay, so let's talk about belonging a little bit. That's me right there. If you would like to engage more on this topic or any topic related to leadership or organizational development, jot down my email address, rsmurdoch@utah.gov. I'd love to talk to you about it. It was, in fact, a year ago tomorrow, the 13th of May, 2020, that our leadership and organizational development group, the group that I work with at DHRM, with Dan Chase and JJ Acker and Shane Krebs, we hosted our very first off-the-shelf webinar. I'm curious to know how many of you were there. Go ahead and hit that raise hand button at the bottom of your screen if you were there at the very first one in May of 2020. It feels kind of recent to me, but in some ways it feels like a long, long time ago. And the fact is, this is our 23rd offering of off-the-shelf since that day. We've done 2 a month with the exception of the end of December since then. And if you're interested in kind of checking out those archives, we have recorded all of them, and you can find them on YouTube. You just do a quick YouTube search there in the search bar, and maybe type in DHRM off the shelf. That'll bring up the playlist, and you can look at what we've done over the last year. They're accessible. They're for you. If you see a topic that you'd like to engage more on, you can reach out to us. We'd love to talk about it. But they're available to you. You can go check them out anytime. And yeah, I guess you could take a little stroll down memory lane with us if you've attended many of these. The great thing about it is, we've basically spent the last year, many of us, not all of us, but many of us have spent the last year working from home. We've been doing this training in our PJs, and I won't admit to what I'm wearing below the waist this morning, although it's a regular suit. Don't worry about it. Okay, here's the agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about belonging. It's kind of emerged as a really important part of a balanced and productive work life. And I think the pandemic really kind of magnified our need for belonging. We've kind of all felt the isolation of it and what it means to belong to a group. So we're going to look at some things today that have come into sharper focus recently. We'll look at laying the groundwork for a productive, engaged team. And we'll look at the benefits of individual performance, individual unique contribution. What I mean by that is what each individual brings in terms of diversity And diversity is much more than maybe how we define it today. And then also, most especially, we'll look at how belonging at work feeds into value. So those are the things that we're going to try to flesh out today. I think it might be useful to you as you follow along here. It might be useful to you to have something to write with, or maybe on your cell phone, whatever you use to take notes. Have it handy, and not necessarily to take notes on what I say, but to jot down ideas that you get as we go along that will help you create a culture of belonging in your team. That's an important thing for us. We'll learn as we go through this, and I think intrinsically we already know it, but it's an important thing to feel that sense of belonging in our teams, and it really does create value, and I'll show you how in just a minute. All right, so let's lay some of the groundwork here. Belonging is kind of an interesting place. It's like understanding the science behind belonging has taken me down just some of the weirdest rabbit holes. Not weird, but interesting rabbit holes, showing me that belonging really is the output of some other things. And I have to admit that I don't necessarily feel qualified to speak definitively on the topics that I'm about to reveal here. But these, the literature is telling us, are pieces that we need to create belonging. It's foundational. And these items have to be in place. These ingredients have to be in place in order to trigger I guess I think of it kind of as a chemical reaction, like a figurative chemical reaction that we're talking about. So these ingredients, let me just bring them up so you can see what I'm talking about here. So let's take a second just to talk about each one. Diversity is one of them. Equity is another. And inclusion is a third one. We see a lot written about these things recently. Diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, as it's abbreviated. One thing I could mention is that Utah's Multicultural Affairs Agency, or Division, I guess, of Multicultural Affairs, they've reordered this acronym from DEI, and they've added to it a little bit. They instead say that E ought to go first because equity is supremely important for DEI measures to work. So for Utah, the acronym is EDI, and then they've also added an A to the end, EDIA, and the A stands for access. So we'll go ahead and throw some access on here. Access meaning equal access to all of this. At least that's the way I interpret it. I think if you're not really familiar with how these things work, or you haven't seen much from the multicultural agency or division at Utah, it would be worth your time to go there. You can get there by just going to multicultural.utah.gov, and you can check out what they've got there. They've got some really great things. There's some just really excellent people working with that division to kind of talk about these issues. And like I said, I don't feel fully qualified to talk about them, but I'm going to just kind of show you how foundational they are to the sense of belonging in a team, and hopefully that will mean something. I've got this chart here. This is a chart that kind of outlines diversity, and it's presented by a professor down at UVU who likes to talk about this particular topic, and I think it's kind of illustrative for us. Look at this chart. If you I hopefully you can see that well enough to read. Notice that diversity at its core is what we generally think of as diversity. Like the core parts of diversity are what we think of, like gender, physical and mental ability, age, and race. These are really the most noticeable things about us, right? And therefore, they're the first items to separate us into groups, and the first things that we tend to discriminate against. Similarly, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, social class, this second core tier, maybe not quite as obvious on the outset, but fairly obvious. Those are things that we look at as things that can separate us into different groups. And the fact is, we are wired through evolution or wherever it comes from We're wired to identify with and protect people most like us. We grew up in tribes, right? We fought wars as peoples. And so our brains are kind of tuned to do that. We protect people that look and sound and think like us. And so that can lead us to seeing people different, seeing people that are different as threats. Our brains might perceive them as threats. One thing I might point out here from this chart is that diversity goes beyond just those first core things. Yes, those are the things that we see, those are the things that we notice most often, but there are other things that bring diversity. Every single person on this planet has a unique set of diversity within their personalities, within their beings. We all bring some diversity with us. And this is kind of a timely and maybe even a fraught topic to discuss, and it's really not what we're here to talk about today. Ultimately, we're going to talk about belonging. But when we boil things down to individuals and work teams and groups, we can see that everybody has a unique set of dimensions, and it makes them uniquely diverse to them. And the more dimensions that we have in our teams, the more that we pull out from people, and the more that we access, the more innovation, creativity, and ability, and also the ability to avoid groupthink we have access to. So diversity is a really important part of making sure that our teams are protected. So bringing people in and then accessing whatever it is about them that makes them diverse is an important part of building a team. It's foundational. The second part is equity. And equity is simply just fairness. And you're probably familiar with the graphic that's there. This is a poor version of, I've seen much better graphics. But the idea here is that equality is giving everybody the same access regardless of their ability to actually use that access, and equity is making sure that everybody has the same access. In other words, because this person here, because they're, through no fault of their own, can't reach the fruit. So equity is making sure that they're able to reach the fruit. And equity equity for this person does not interfere with this person equitably being able to find access to the fruit. It's not related at all. So that's that. When we're building our teams foundationally, we have to have an element of fairness. The rules can't be set to favor one group over another. They just can't be. There has to be fairness in access, or at least fairness in the rules. So let's just say that. And then next, we've got inclusion. And inclusion is simply this. My social group is included and valued and not overly pointed out. We bring them in, we love everybody, we accept them for who they are, and then we use their individual diversity to create and work together, but we don't constantly harp on the differences or the different, one particular different group. All three of these items, diversity, equity, inclusion, they have to be in place. They are the ingredients that we need to build a place of belonging. And I know that when we talk about DEI, we're thinking about racial groups, sexual orientation, those types of things, those things that are kind of more on the forefront. But I'm not really talking about that in particular. I'm talking about having a place where everyone's included and their diversity is valued and they are treated fairly. The rules are fair for all groups. Doesn't matter what the group is. That's not what we're talking about here today. Okay. So let's maybe talk about what happens when one of those areas is lacking. Let's say, for example, we've built a nice place that has fair rules. The rules are built to be fair, and we're including everyone, but we don't have a ton of diversity. That's not hard for us to imagine, is it? Some of us do work in a place where there's not a ton of diversity. So what happens when diversity isn't valued or sought after? Well, the result usually means a homogeneous culture. Yeah, it's welcoming, but it's missing context that could be helpful. A homogenous dominating culture will dominate if we're not actively seeking to find the diversity in the team. If we don't tap into that diversity, we generally won't be open to bringing in new things. We'll find ourselves in ruts sometimes. So I think it's worth really thinking about in the particular place that we live and work, where diversity is maybe a little underrepresented. Are we valuing diversity where we can find it? Or are we looking at a homogenous culture and making sure that everybody complies to that culture? It's worth asking. Let's imagine that diversity and inclusion are in place, but equity is not. What happens when that is our scenario? People are welcome and included when they play by the rules. That's how this plays out. The rules are set for a specific group of people, and everybody's welcome, but they have to play by the rules that have been set by this specific group. So it's worth thinking about. And then finally, what happens when we have diversity and equity in place, but inclusion is not there? This configuration basically just keeps us and them separations. So yeah, we want lots of groups, but we're going to point out how different that group is from this group. We're going to make sure it's fair for them to play, but we're going to continually point at the differences. And we're not going to find ourselves coming together. Okay. With that all as kind of background and foundation, let's take a look at where we go from here. There's our initial model. Diversity, equity, inclusion are in place, and access has been given to everybody equally. We're all feeling part of the team. We're all feeling like the rules work for us. We're all feeling like what we bring uniquely is valued. Once that happens, this is where belonging comes, right in that little space, that little this little space right here where everything overlaps. That's where belonging lives. Oops, right there. This term isn't new. We've been watching tear-jerking movies about angsty people who don't belong forever, ever since the 80s at least, right? These angsty young people that just don't belong and they feel sad about it. But the fact is, and really belonging can be kind of a touchy subject. It's kind of touchy-feely, really. And some of you may be balking at this. Some of you may be pulling back and thinking, this is just, who cares about this? But there is a real business case to be made in favor of creating a place where people feel like they belong. There's a real solid, strong business case for it. And it's pretty easy to show you. Let me see if I can do that. A study conducted by Better Up, and it's referenced in an HBR article that I'll take a lot of my, a bit of what I'm going to talk to you about from, kind of revealed some surprising findings, at least surprising to me. The first thing is that when somebody feels like they belong in a team, your turnover risk, the risk of them leaving the job, goes down by 50%. Feeling like you belong on a team keeps you there. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Another thing that happens is that the use of sick leave goes down 75%. The use of sick leave. And then most impressively to me is that job performance goes up 56%. How well we do our jobs is dependent a little bit, or maybe a lot, on whether or not we feel like we belong on our team. So ask yourself, how many employees does the state of Utah have? I don't know what the number is. It's thousands and thousands. How many taxpayer dollars are saved simply by creating a sense of belonging among our teams. This translates to real cost savings. That's your business case for creating a sense of belonging on your teams. It could save millions. Now, on the flip side of that, just one incident of exclusion can cost an individual in productivity. Productivity goes down when people feel excluded at work. And I'm not exactly sure I know exactly what they mean by exclusion, but I'm guessing that it can be avoided. Probably through transparency, consistent gratitude, empathy. Those types of things probably can help us avoid people feeling like they're being excluded. One more time, I just want to show you one more time those statistics. Job performance up 56%, turnover risk down 50%, use sick leave down 75% when people feel like they belong. And again, one incident of exclusion can cost an individual in their productivity. It's psychology in some ways. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here. I want to show you really quickly, if I could, a little video. This is kind of, I don't know, I just like it and I want to show it to you. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take over the screen here and see if I can find my tab. I had it ready. There it is. All right, this is a little video of a kid who entered a writing contest. Good, okay. He's a hockey player from Canada, and he entered this writing contest, and this was the essay that he wrote about being part of a team.
My name is Reese, and I am a 10-year-old goalie who plays rep hockey for the Whitby Wildcats. Being part of a team means a lot of things, and I would like to share what being part of a team means to me. The best part of belonging to a team is getting to hang out with your friends. At the beginning of the season, we are a bunch of players who play hockey. In a short period of time, we become a bunch of friends who play hockey together. On the ice, we support each other with positive comments. We can't win on our own. We need to play our positions and work together to support each other. Being part of a team means we have to listen to our coaches. We have to show up for practice and be on time. Our coaches help us learn and develop as players. We respect each other on and off the ice. Being a team is also respecting the other team. Someone has to win, lose, or tie in every game, and it may be our team next time. The most fun part for me is wearing my uniform. When people see me wearing my blue Whitby Wildcat jacket, they know I am part of a team. They may know some of my friends. They may wish they were part of a team just like me.
All right, let me go back to our presentation here. Is that still coming through? Okay. So what are some things that we can take away from that, from Reese's presentation? He belongs to a hockey team. He won the writing contest. Let's see, I got to resume presenting. There we go. I have a question for you. How does one morph from being players who play hockey to a bunch of friends playing hockey together? How do we do that in our teams figuratively? This is a rhetorical question. You don't need to necessarily answer it, but that's something worth thinking about. He talked about, or Reese talked about, I'm not sure, I wasn't clear if Reese was male or female or what, but that doesn't matter. Who cares? But Reese talked about changes that happen when we start playing together. How do we do that? How do we become a bunch of friends playing hockey together? Think about that for a moment. Now, I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that you must think of coworkers as best friends. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying, however, is that your work group is a team. And when you belong in that team, you do good work. So how do we get to the point where we feel like we are a bunch of friends playing hockey together rather than a bunch of players who play hockey? Something to think about. Then ask yourself maybe this: is my team, figuratively speaking, a bunch of friends playing hockey together? Or are we players who play hockey? Of course, hockey is figurative in this analogy. All right, for this one, I do actually want you to answer this question. What does it mean to belong to a team? Go to your chat box and just type in the chat box, in the chat feature, just type in some ideas here. What does it mean to belong to a team? Having a common goal, that's great. Synergy, working together towards common goals. Now they're coming fast. Feeling inclusive, support, having a role and working towards a goal. Purpose, common identity, feeling like you contribute, respect. A group of people working together to finish a project or assignment. Ooh, psychological safety. We'll come back to that one in a minute. Someone has your back. Trust. Shared experiences. Making individual contributions to the betterment of the team. People who care about each other. Different cogs working in unison to make the goal achievable. Wow, we've got some real writers out here. Very nice. Trust and support. Having a needed and complementary skill set. That's your part of the team. Love that. And I guess you could scroll up through there and take a look at those as we move on. It's important to feel like we belong to a team in our workplace, and we've seen that more and more as we've spent the last year kind of working on our own in our homes. Connecting to our teams has become important, more and more important, like more obviously important. I think it's always been important. Okay, so there may be a catalyst that will help us do this very thing. I'm no chemist, but I understand that when certain types of chemicals are combined, they create a reaction, like vinegar and baking soda. But if you add a catalyst to the reaction, it speeds up the process. Catalysts provide basically an alternate path for the reaction to happen. It speeds things up, and the catalyst kind of doesn't become part of the reaction. It stays the same, but it just really does trigger it. That's the idea behind a catalyst. I'm kind of sick of it. Okay, one more time on this. Boing. Yeah, let's get rid of that. Okay. And like I mentioned before, the catalyst is not necessarily an ingredient in the foundation of things, but it is the thing that helps trigger it and keep it moving. So let's imagine that EDIA, the way the state defines it, is the recipe for creating a workplace that includes belonging. What catalyst do we add to that that gets us there faster? And there was a bit of a spoiler in our in our answer to the last question in the chat feature. Somebody mentioned it, at least the way that I see it. Oh, I didn't turn off that thing. You've been just watching that reaction over and over again. All right. In an HBR article by Laura De La Zona, she mentions how Google did this massive 2-year study on team performance, which revealed that the highest performing teams have one thing in common, and that thing is psychological safety. Somebody mentioned it in the chat. Psychological safety. Psychological safety is defined this way: the belief that you won't be punished when you make a mistake. The belief that you're safe to make mistakes, correct the mistakes, yes, but you're safe to make them in pursuit of doing things better or more efficiently or whatever. The belief that you won't be punished when you make a mistake is psychological safety. And the Google study revealed that the highest performing teams have that in common. Studies show that psychological safety allows for moderate risk taking, allows for speaking our minds. It gives us a chance to be more creative. It allows us to stick out our necks without fear of having our heads chopped off. Just the very type of behavior that really leads to breakthrough and innovation. That's what psychological safety does for us. Our ancient brain, and really I'm saying that psychological safety is the catalyst that leads more quickly to belonging. Once we've got those ingredients in place, the EDIA ingredients in place, we throw in a little bit of psychological safety and we have a catalyst that brings on belonging. Our ancient brain development kind of explains why we do better when we think we're not under threat. I mean, it makes total sense. Our brains don't exactly distinguish between whether it's a life or death threat or just a regular you're going to be punished type threat. The brain just deals with threats the same way. And what it does is it shuts down the cognitive part of the brain, and it turns on the fight, flight, or freeze section of the brain, the amygdala, and we act now and think later. And when we're under threat that is not life or death, that is exactly opposite of what we really want to do. We want to be able to think so we can make good decisions. But when we feel threatened, our decision making takes a step back. Right when we need it most. So success for today, like for workers working in modern businesses and offices, our success really does depend on a different system. It depends on the broaden and build mode of positive emotion. Psychological safety. The opposite of threat. Positive emotion, which allows us to solve complex problems. It allows us to foster cooperative relationships. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson of the University of North Carolina, she found that positive emotions like trust, curiosity, confidence, inspiration, they all broaden. They all broaden the mind's abilities, and they help us build psychological, social, and physical resources. Again, that's trust, curiosity, confidence, inspiration. They help us build psychological, social, and physical safe spaces. We become more open-minded, we become more resilient, we become more motivated, we become more persistent when we feel safe. When we feel like we can make a mistake without being burned, we feel safe. Our humor increases, our ability to find solutions. We tend to feel more confident in raising objections and talking about where things might go wrong. All of it kind of relies on this catalyst. We need to build workspaces that are safe for people to try things, to innovate, to make mistakes. Now, we can learn from our mistakes, absolutely, but we see mistakes differently than when we are punishing mistakes. We see them as opportunities rather than as, oh no, we got to cover that up. That's the catalyst that leads us to this, belonging. Foundationally, we've got access. We're valuing diversity, and we have rules that are fair. We're including all groups. Oh, and by the way, for belonging, we can think of it this way. Inclusion and belonging kind of work together, but the way that they work together is that inclusion is that my social group is being included fairly. And once that's done, we don't think so much about it when we get to belonging. Belonging is more about the individual feeling safe in that place, able to do their work, engaging in it, knowing that they're adding value. And then, of course, the catalyst for all of it is to just provide this foundation with a psychological safety net. In other words, you are safe to try things in this space without fear of punishment. Now, we have to be careful because obviously there are times when performance improvement and performance management are part of what we need to do with folks, right? The difference here is that when we're making mistakes on the road towards betterment, instead of making mistakes because we're trying to cheat the system or whatever else. Okay. Again, psychological safety is our catalyst, and our foundation is EDIA. That'll lead us to belonging. We want to make sure that our folks feel like they're belonging. At this point, I would like for you to take a minute and jot down what ideas you've had as we've talked through this. How are you going to make your particular workspace more a place where people can feel belonging? How are you going to do it? What are you going to do? What are some of your thoughts? I'll take just 30 seconds to just jot down some ideas. I think that would be important because we'll end this call and then we'll forget everything that we talked about. So take a second, jot those down. While you're doing that, I'd just like to remind you about these two things. Supervisor Survival Guide, and I didn't really get into the CLIP assessment when I announced the Supervisor Survival Guide earlier. The CLIP assessment is basically an assessment that you sign up for as a leader. You fill out our form. We will send that survey out to your folks, the people that report to you. They will rate you in a number of areas, and then we'll come to you, show you what feedback you got. Of course, it's all anonymous for those of you that for the folks that work for you. And we'll just do some spot coaching, kind of work through some things, and it'll all be based on your team's feedback, and hopefully it will give you some areas where you have strengths that you can lean on, and some areas where you can maybe look to make some improvements. That's the CLIP assessment. You'll find that in an email that's coming out this week. You'll see that in your inbox in the next couple of days. Watch for it, and if you're interested in having an assessment like that and some spot coaching, be sure to click on it and fill it out, and we will be in touch. That's all I have for today. Again, I'm Rick Murdoch. That's my email address there, rsmurdoch@utah.gov. If you have comments or feedback from today's session, or if you'd like to engage in any topic related to organizational development or leadership, I'd love to talk to you. Thanks again for your time and attention, and we'll end it there. Thanks. We'll hope to see you soon.